Hi, Lauren and Alex. We're both so excited to have you on our show today. And we love how we were connected through a mutual friend in the health and wellness space. And we love how you've taken such an initiative to really raise the bar in this space and to use your own personal journey and challenge to help better the lives of others. So we can't wait to dive in and share all that you're doing and Kiki Milk with our listeners today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Marnie. We're so excited to be here. We love the podcast and we're really excited to dive in with you guys.
Well, great. Well, before we do that, one little kind of icebreaker type question we like to ask is, if you could master any skill today, it doesn't have to be health or fitness related or anything, what would it be? And you can each take a turn to answer if you want a minute. But just could be something fun or something you always wanted to do.
Oh my gosh, master any skill.
That's a fun question.
My inclination is to go deep always. I was like, oh man, as a mom, emotion regulation or, I think less deep would honestly be braiding French braiding the back of my hair on my own. The girls that I grew up with could do it, and they'd show up to field hockey practice or, track, and it would just be the most beautiful, fish braid. And I can barely do a ponytail. So let's put that in the ether.
One of my daughters is a master braider. It's so unbelievable.
Impressive. Really?
Okay. Beautiful. I want that skill also. That is a good one for me because yes.
Maybe I should have her make a YouTube video.
Yes. I would watch it. Yeah.
What about you, Alex?
My gut reaction was to speak all the languages. So then we travel, we're more local. And then I realized that probably Chat GPT is going to take that away, that skill. I may not need to know that skill. And then I thought, I want to become a master Chat GPT inputter so that I can use the AI better and more effectively.
Yeah.
But I see you shaking your head, Marnie. I think you're also right. Keeping it human, learning language skills is important, and we can't just offshore everything to tech.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that face-to-face communication, it's not like you're going to pull out your phone and say, where can I buy
Kiki Milk?
Glyphosate-free milk in Japan?
Yeah. Language skills would be great. One of Lauren's best friend can speak 17 languages.
That is so cool.
Wow. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. She's brilliant. And her son, who's best friends with my son, Unkwai, I think he's up to 8 languages and he's turning 6.
That's
amazing.
My gosh. That's so incredible. My husband is really into learning languages, and he has been studying a lot of different languages. He uses Duolingo, and I tease him all the time, but it's effective.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what inspired you guys to start PlantBaby and produce Kiki Milk? And we're just curious, in a nutshell, some of the moments on your journey.
Yes. What a journey. It was an unexpected career change for the both of us. Alex and I, we were not in the CPG, consumer packaged goods world. And I wasn't in food and beverage. Alex came from a Google background, and he had built companies, but in more so the tech world. And I was in building an education nonprofit. I was in the social emotional learning realm and psych, and I was working in school districts, and I saw a lot of behavioral issues there, but never with the food side of things, always with the psyche. And when I became a mom is really when I think all of our backgrounds and worlds collided, and everything up to that moment made a lot of sense. But really it had to do with me losing the majority of my breast milk supply. And I don't think that new moms are really prepared for the possibility of that, or even the moms that exclusively breastfed now, they're I still don't really understand how to breastfeed, and if on-demand exclusive breastfeeding, is how it works. And it's really tough what you can go through. the latching and tongue ties and everything that, goes into it that no one really talks about. So I
have to just interrupt you for 1 minute and tell you that my mother-in-law founded the field of lactation consulting and is like this breastfeeding guru. So It's just kind of funny to hear you say that. And I personally had every breastfeeding problem you can imagine, but I stuck with it because I had a mother-in-law that knew how to deal with all of those different issues. But
that's incredible. I mean, honestly, I would say 80% of my conversations, the mom is sharing, I had some difficulty with breastfeeding. And unless you have really specific support, it's very hard to continue. And most moms need to rely on a plan B, which is what we ultimately had to do. And I feel like I tried everything. Like skin to skin contact for 24 hours, eating, certain foods and drinking certain herbal teas and pumping after I feel like all the things. And my body just lost most of its supply. And so, we were raising our son on Quai at the time. It was the first month of COVID where the world kind of shut down and no one knew what was going on. And, supply and demand for infant formula, it was a really scary place to be in that moment. I think when people panic, they buy bread, eggs, milk, toilet paper, and infant formula. And so we, kind of looked at each other one night when Alakai was screaming because he didn't have enough of my supply to be satiated and he wasn't eating solids yet. He was around 6 or 7 months. And he just didn't want solids. And so really, it went from exclusively breastfeeding to needing something in that moment. And we couldn't just go to the store and buy an infant formula because Alakai dealt with colic for the first 3 months of his life. And the one piece of advice I was given from our pediatrician was take soy and dairy out of your diet, see if it's transferring in the breast milk. Yep. I staggered it to see if it was one or the other. It was both. And so he got much better. But then, around the 6 or 7 months postpartum mark, and we were up at 2 a.m. Like we needed an infant formula. We need this backup to supplement some of my breast milk. And we're online looking at what we can get as quickly as possible. And the only 2 options on the US market for infant formula are soy and cow dairy. 5 years ago, the goat formula, I don't think was approved by the FDA then. I've heard that you can buy infant formula from goat in the store now, but even that wasn't really an option. And so we kind of had this solemn moment of, what do you mean we can't feed our infant? It's 2020. What do you mean there's no plant-based infant formula option in the US? Australia has it. New Zealand has it. Different countries in Europe have it. Like Canada has one. Where's our clean, non-soy, non-cow dairy infant formula? We can't be the only parents who need this. Soy and cow dairy are 2 of the, most common aversions and sensitivities, especially for little ones. And so basically, the next day I called our pediatrician and I said, I have to make this at home in my blender. I had ordered something that I was going to goat milk formula from New Zealand. It was going to take 3 weeks to ship during that COVID time. And I didn't have 3 weeks to wait. I was reaching out to moms, seeing if they had an oversupply. Like really, we did everything that we could. But ultimately we had to make something in our blender. And I had an idea of the base formulation, but I really needed experts to help guide me. And thankfully, he wasn't like 3 weeks old. A late stage infant formula looks, I think, very different. But we looped in our pediatrician and he helped me make something adequate enough in our blender. And then when Alakai turned 12 months old, I was so excited to stop making this 3 times a day and straining it, 3 times a day so that it could be the right consistency to fit through the bottle nipple. And, we were getting fresh coconut meat and we were getting bananas from our tree and we were using sprouted pumpkin seeds and spring water and, the base ingredients that are now in Kiki Milk. And when he was 1, I went to the store like, oh my gosh, thank God I don't have to make this anymore. This is, it takes a lot of time. And when you're postpartum, you don't have like all the time in the world to make infant formula from scratch. So when we were standing in the plant-based milk grocery aisle, like looking at all of these options, and none of them were made as really like a transition milk or specifically for little ones who had, food sensitivities. They lacked protein, they lacked calcium, they had seed oils, they had natural flavors, or they had gums. Like there was always some very obvious hole in whatever, we were looking at. And I looked at Alex like, we have to keep making this, but I think we need to scale it. Like, I think there's a white space on both sides, like a plant-based milk that's actually clean label for little ones. And then also our North Star product will always be an infant formula, because if we, don't make that, then we don't have that again for our own baby in the future. And I've just now spoken to thousands of parents who are in the same boat.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing all that. And I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there who can absolutely relate to various pieces of your story. And I think what would be great to kind of start this conversation and dive deeper, or like, can we talk about some of the real issues with certain ingredients? And you kind of started to touch on them. They're in a lot of processed foods, and in particular, plant-based milks, which I've been using a variety of for, 8, 9 years, for a long time. Actually, I was doing soy milk back in my mid-20s because I was lactose intolerant. And a lot of times people think, oh, that's healthy, especially now with the oat milk and these other, but you got to peel back the label. Literally, you got to look at what's in these products. And maybe we can talk about some of that and your journey and what you learned. Now how has our current industrial food system kind of failed Americans, to be honest?
You're absolutely right. And I believe that I think 10 years ago, were able to maybe pick up something plant-based in the grocery store and feel like this is the better option. This is the cleaner, healthier option. And then over the last decade, they really have become known for fillers, gums, emulsifiers, natural flavors, then they're highly processed, like ultra processed in the grocery store. And I think that's when a wave of the keto carnivore diet came in, the paleo diet, get back to the whole foods, that we're meant to consume, rather than all of these packaged plant-based items. And so it got a bad rap for a good reason. And it's people are very touchy about plant-based milk online. I think that there's a raw milk community that is like, very adamant that plant-based milk is bad. And when if I go on lives, or if I'm making a reel or something, like I want to validate them. Most plant-based milks do have a laundry list of unnecessary ingredients. I'm not one to just spread fear. As a new mom, I would go on to Instagram kind of like looking for education or support in one area or another. And I would see so many reels around like, how terrible seed oils are, and it's linked to, like this or that, and glyphosate and cancer, and all of these things are so true. There is research now to back it up. However, when I talk about it, it's like, so it's not triggering to moms and people who are sensitive to this. At the end of the day, they're just unnecessary ingredients. Like there is no benefit to put them in. Unnecessary. We don't need gums if you're putting an abundance of whole foods in there. Gums are to trick your brain and mouthfeel into thinking that it's creamy and that there's a whole cup of coconut, when really there's just a few little pieces of coconut. And it's the company's way of making sure that their product has a good return rate. Like they're making it for 50 cents and they're selling it for $4.50.
I was just going to say, like, this makes me so mad because, like, when I think about it, I'm lactose intolerant. I always have been, whatever. I can totally relate to your baby story. Like, I had a colicky baby and I gave up dairy and soy and all the same stuff. So I have been drinking almond milk for years, giving it to my children for years. And I truly, until I became more educated in this space, had no idea all the crap that was in what I'm drinking. And Do I aspire to make my own almond milk? Absolutely. Like in a perfect world, I would be straining the almonds and making the milk every week. We drink so much almond milk in this house, but I'm not. So I love that you guys are addressing this issue. And I know, you're directing this to mothers with kids, but I have to say, I think that these products are needed for everybody, not just mothers and kids, because there are a lot of adults walking around drinking these kinds of milks too.
I know. We agree. Thank you for saying that. I do, think it's a constant conversation we're internally having with the branding. And I think it was smart to launch niche because it was a very specific white space that we were filling. However, I've been, dealing with chronic illness for really 35 years. And I was also lactose intolerant, but I have had so many health issues, recurring infections and, like mold and Lyme and heavy metals and all the things and all the testing. And I've seen so many specialists that when we made the product, I made it through that lens. I was formulating so that we had the most comprehensive nutrient rich back panel that we could possibly have. The clean carbohydrate from the glyphosate-free oats, the protein, the fiber, the good fats, the omegas, so that's why it's a blend and not just a mono ingredient plant-based milk, which is so common. You grab cashew milk. Okay, cashews are great, but they can only give you so much nutrition, in one realm. And so I wanted it to be all of these things and include none of the weird ingredients, none of the gum seed oils, are, natural flavors and yada, yada. But I then went a step further because it was for me too, to get back to your point. I'm an adult. I don't need an infant formula, but Whole Foods is Whole Foods. When you cross over the 1 year mark, you're giving your baby sweet potato and hemp seeds and chia seeds and banana and, if you're like chicken or eggs, like whatever you're eating in your household. And for us, we just wanted it to be some of the most nutrient dense whole foods blended together. And that's good for everybody. And because I'm making it through it like a chronic illness sensitivity lens, we started third-party lab testing all of our ingredients and our finished product for heavy metals, pesticides, and mold. So we're triple toxin screened. And we're glyphosate residue free.
That's all amazing, by the way.
Yeah. Very few companies, if any, can say that they're doing that.
Yes, very few companies do it. And I think that adults alarmingly are getting diagnosed with autoimmune conditions, cancers that we've never seen before in a 35 to 45-year-old population. And these are parents, with little kids having to, I think, really hone in on the why, the root cause. And you can't ignore diet. You can't ignore what's in our food and what's not in our food. If the soil is leached of nutrients, then you're not getting what you think you are anymore. So, and that's a problem as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome that you're doing all this testing, especially like we talked about a little bit before we started recording with the glyphosate, because we just had this whole episode on it and Marnie and I did testing. And I think more people are going to start to find that it is in their system and it doesn't just leave you easily. You can't just pee it out or anything. Right. And so it's so important. And just like your passion for doing this right and not just all about profit, which is what a lot of the CPG companies are focused on. And the blend of the ingredients that you have, like you said. So like the really good healthy fats, that's one thing that stood out for me when I looked at your ingredients, and all the seeds and the coconut and everything else. You touched on natural flavors, I think, a bit early on. And that is one of those ingredients that is just like no one knows really what's in there. And it's in even healthy organic products. So can you touch on that? Because I don't think, unless you are like in this space and you are religiously looking at your labels, I don't think people really pay that much attention because it's in so many things. Sure. Can you dive into like what is a natural flavor and why we need to be, avoiding it to the extent possible?
Yes. I believe that they're unnecessary for so many reasons. And I love to like open the door into the background of what it looks like to have a food company, because it was really frustrating for us the first year, interviewing food science teams or, co-packers, because they ultimately, want you to take the shortcut that everyone else is taking, and natural flavors is a shortcut. There's thousands of types of natural flavors that may have once upon a time been naturally derived from, I don't know, some plant, some fruit or something to get that flavor. But some of them are just purely lab made, and they're still allowed to be called natural flavor. But it's tricky when you're putting it in a product that is consistently consumed by a little one, because it does trick the brain, signaling the stomach, the rest of the body, to know when they're full. So when you're consuming something, especially something crunchy with natural flavors, like the natural cheese flavor or, natural smoked, types of flavors, you think that like eating a normal amount, and you're not. You can't tell when to stop because that signaling gets disrupted by the natural flavors. And ultimately, you don't need them if you're just using real food. And so when we were making the plant-based milk, they said, well, you can cut down some of your like whole foods. Like you could put like 30% less sprouted pumpkin seed in there and coconut. If you just add a little natural flavor, it'll taste great and you'll save money on your end. And I was like, you're really missing the point here. Like we're an actual really clean label, like company for little kids. Like I want people to use this as a transition milk. I want people who have Lyme or, a chronic illness to put this in their iced matcha and not be getting duped. Like this is not the point of it. But it's so common. It's such a common, like quick fix in the CPG land.
Well, and I have to believe that you feel like you're fighting an uphill battle when it comes to that, because the words natural flavors, I mean, I look at labels all the time. They're everywhere. And like, even my own kids, they see the word natural and I think they're pretty educated in this space. They fall for it. I mean, it's like hard not to, right? Because natural is natural, but it's just so frustrating. And I really applaud what you guys are doing, because we need more companies out there like you that really, truly care about what you're putting in your products. And of course you want to make money. Everybody wants to make money to survive, right? But to do it for the good of the people, I guess, and make money and for the good of your children would be the goal, right?
Well, it's people over profit.
Yeah. Or people and profit. I mean, who's to say you can't have both?
Well, you should make money. I mean, that's right. It's part of capitalism, but
we would ultimately like to stay alive as a company.
And I would think this would be a really hard space to stay alive, in all honesty, with your goals. So do you feel like there are a lot of other companies, or are you seeing more companies out there that are trying to do, not necessarily with the plant-based milk, but just in general, trying to avoid some of these products, like the natural flavors and the, I don't even know how you say this word, but carrageenan or
the gums and
all of that stuff.
Yeah, there's like a handful of companies that we love and champion, and like Lovebird Cereal, incredible founder, father.
He's in Minnesota.
Wait, what was the name?
He's local.
Lovebird.
He's in Minnesota, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Because he's a fellow GM. Yeah. I have some friends that know him. Yeah,
fantastic mission. And is also fighting, the good fight as well. And Jovial, I think, is glyphosate residue free, and I think they test their products. And, in the plant-based space, like we never feel challenged by a company who's like doing good things and making healthy products. We want, to have more friends like linking arms with us. Like 3 Trees is such a great option.
Yes. Yeah.
They, I looked at that one for Alakai. It lacked the amount of calcium I was looking for, and he wouldn't take it. Like the flavor wasn't meant specifically for little ones. So when I was formulating it, I needed to kind of mimic the flavor of breast milk, like that sweetness a little bit. With banana, we spent a year. We had 12 months of formulation, hundreds of iterations, and like a dozen kiddos on the island. And we'd give them little bottles And we'd say, which one do you like? And they, really taught us about their palate and what they, liked for our product. And that's how we launched. And I think that's why it was so successful. I really felt like we were supported immediately because we made it very intentionally and we had kid feedback the whole time. So it did well.
Which is great. And it's also, like you said, good for adults. Like I've used it to make tea lattes and, or add it to a smoothie and that sort of thing too. What about, we talked a little bit about the gums and the fillers, but how come there's like products out there that'll say they're fortified with like, look at all these vitamins and minerals. And that also gets a parent to say like, oh, well, it has all these added vitamins and minerals. So it must be good for my child.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Synthetic fortification is very common when it comes to the plant-based, dairy-free space. We chose not to synthetically fortify. Well, number one, we didn't need to because we had so much whole food in there. The sprouted, and again, a blend, the sprouted pumpkin seeds with magnesium and zinc and manganese and the oats and hemp seeds with omegas and coconut and banana. And then
yum, you're making me hungry.
we were like, oh, well, we're not lacking. The only thing that you're not allowed to put in to a plant-based milk is D3. It's illegal, and orange juice can do it. Cow milk can do it. But if you're a plant-based milk, you don't have to use a vitamin D, but if you choose to, you're forced to do vitamin D2, which is kind of an inferior version of vitamin D. You ultimately want D3. It's more bioavailable. So we chose to not put a lesser form of vitamin D2 in there, but any synthetic fortification comes with a list of sub-ingredients that are not required to be put on the label. So,
really?
Mm-hmm.
So can you say that again for our listeners?
Sure. Any synthetic fortification, like vitamin E or vitamin A that you see on the nutrition label, it comes with a list of sub-ingredients, usually like 4 to 10 ingredients that you're not required to put on the label because it's such a small amount. However, some of those sub-ingredients don't sit well with me, like maltodextrin is a common sub-ingredient. And I think the people on the other side of the table would argue it's such a small amount, really. Like it doesn't do anything bad. That's fine. I'm not saying it hurts you. I'm saying it's unnecessary, and I'm choosing to not put in any unnecessary ingredients, especially if there's no transparency around it. I thought that it was strange that I wasn't required to put it on the label. And, I would even we were looking at banana, sourcing organic banana, and it's a small amount of banana, but some sources had like 4 ingredients that helped the banana mix in. And so we could source just organic banana powder, or we could source organic banana powder with maltodextrin and like 3 other ingredients that we weren't required to put on the label. And that's an obvious choice for me. I'm just going to choose the pure organic banana. But it's like behind the scenes, like,
well, what is the why? What is the why behind that? Like, why would someone not choose the organic banana? That's what I'm not following.
I guess the price was a little bit different. The plain organic banana was a little bit more expensive. And we are coming out of a period of time where perfection was expected. The expectation of perfection when it came to the way our vegetables and fruit looked in the store, they would, ugly fruit now, or that company, and people weren't really making things from scratch. Like the Nora Smith trend now, who's like a famous mom and TikToker who I think she battles eczema or psoriasis, and she started to have to make things from scratch. Now people are seeing what it really looks like to have raw ingredients and that it's not perfect. And so the plant-based era, everything had to be perfect. So separation is natural. Like this is like a new trend. No, it couldn't separate before. You had to use a gum and an emulsifier. And if the banana powder didn't perfectly, mix in, that's why you would have like the maltodextrin and everything. So it comes down to founders' choices now. And and individual companies making different kinds of decisions and people being more educated around these topics. And I think social media and podcasts have done such a great job of telling people, you know, what's in the things, what's not in the things, what's good and what's unnecessary.
So with all of the processed foods that are out there still, and there's like, you know, there's foods like the faux meats, for example, that people think, well, I'm not eating, you know, I'm a vegetarian, I'm not eating cow, but I'm going to get my fake meat and it's going to taste kind of like maybe, I mean, I don't eat it, so I don't know what it tastes like, but it doesn't look tasty to me at all. Do you think we can get to a place where people will actually realize that maybe these faux meats aren't so good for us?
I do think that I think there's a wave of people that, you know, are now on the other side of that. Like 10 years ago, I was a vegetarian for a very long time, on and off vegan. And that seemed like the better option. And now I think that people know that that's usually not the better option. And hopefully using it, if they're vegan and they want a burger, it's more of a treat rather than an everyday, you know, staple in their diet. But I really think it's the people with chronic illness were like the canaries in the coal mine. You know, it made us sick. The highly processed, even the plant-based highly processed foods ultimately did, you know, make the conditions worse and people are having flare-ups. And so it's really always back to whole foods, no matter, you know, wherever you are on the spectrum, if you eat meat or not eat meat, it's really the whole foods are where it's at.
Yeah. And I think, you know, just in general, like how we fuel our body and like the fact that you mentioned that you have these chronic illnesses and using food and really dissecting has helped. And you're not the only one out there. There's a lot of listeners that have undiagnosed even chronic illnesses. You know, one thing I think it's important to talk about is just the cost of doing business the way you're doing it is going to be a little more expensive than the watered down almond milk with the carrageenan in it or whatever. And it's an investment in your health. And it's like you can either pay for your food today or pay your doctor bills later to some degree. And not that we don't have to go to the doctor, but, you know, can you talk a little bit about that? Like why it's important, how you see this investment in your child, in your health, like really benefiting your overall, you know, health and longevity and well-being, and why that's important to you. And maybe just a message, you know, of encouragement for our listeners, or just to not be so focused on the dollar amount of one single item as a reason not to buy a product.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Alex, who is really the business and finance brilliant mind behind running a company that's not cutting corners, but staying alive and, you know, really trying to get towards profitability. I don't know if you want to answer that question. And
yeah, I think you said it right, Stephanie. You know, you either pay for it now or you pay for it later. And when you pay for it later, you pay with financially, you pay for it later, but you also pay for it in a lot of different ways, emotionally, physically, your lifespan, the impact on your family and friends. There's so many ways that toll and burden is passed around later. You know, for us, we've been really encouraged. When we launched end of December of 2021, we sold out in 2 weeks. And we had a premium price point. You know, we didn't know how this launch was going to go. You know, when you launch something into the world, you kind of have to hold your breath and see what happens. And we launched at a premium price point in the category, and we sold out in 2 weeks. And I think that's a combination of a few things. One, that the initial launch was really around children, and that parents don't cut corners when it comes to their kids' well-being. Mm-hmm. So they invested in that. And I, you know, you look at the ingredient panel, you look at the nutrition panel, and you're getting a lot more than, I think we're priced actually really well because you're getting so much for your dollar. You know, my job is to really figure out how do we cut costs while maintaining integrity. You know, working with different vendors, working with different suppliers and manufacturing partners and packaging partners. How do we give the customer the best possible product at the lowest possible price, while making sure that the company has the ability to be around? You know, we're not coming at this to be a martyr. You know, that's not the win, to say, oh, we fought this good fight. We did all the right things, but we didn't scale. Like, that ultimately doesn't really do any good for anybody. So it's a delicate balance and something that is honestly a daily and weekly conversation with the company around it. It's not easy. That's for sure. It takes a lot of smart people with good intentions to figure out a short-term and long-term plan of viability. Ultimately, customers are voting with their dollars, and they're purchasing our products, and that's
100%.
That's the bottom line.
And we say that to our listeners all the time. Like, you can make a difference with your purchasing power. Like, the way you purchase products is going to catch the eye of the people creating the products, right?
Right.
But I think there's also a big education piece here, right? Because I mean, I even talked to so many people. I was out last night even, and there are many, many people that are not educated even on just reading labels and really focusing on what's in the food that you're ingesting, and that food can really affect you. It just boggles my mind how people still say, oh, what you eat doesn't really have an impact on your skin or on your mood or on your, if you're getting sick or not. And I think we just need to keep educating people.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, you don't vote once every 4 years, you vote every day.
Yeah.
Right.
And you vote with your money and your dollars. And that's the vote. And these companies, are trying to get the votes and trying to stay around. Yeah. I mean, health, diet, and nutrition is the number one, I think, reason why you're healthy or not healthy. At the end of the day, like, let food be thy medicine has been around for centuries, that mantra.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it. So hopefully, Mari, that false notion is slowly leaving the zeitgeist, and people are waking up to that. And companies like Kiki Milk and Lovebird and others and Jovial and, I think are showing how important it is. And by us being around and, getting into Sprouts and getting into Costco and being more mainstream, it's a good sign.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And company, like Thrive Market, because they do such a good job of like promoting.
Yeah. We've been in
brands.
Thrive since week 2 of our launch. They were our first partner.
That's amazing.
They approved us with unbranded packaging, and they've been with us every step of the way. So shout out to Thrive.
We love Thrive. And
we interviewed the chief marketing officer like in 20 or 21. It was like
early in the podcast.
Early on in our podcast.
Yeah, he was great.
We're the number 2 milk on Thrive out of 14.
Okay.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Number 1 kids beverage as well on Thrive.
So everyone go join Thrive and check out Kiki Milk.
Yeah.
Kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah. You can get us on kikimilk.com. You can get us at Amazon, at Sprouts. We're trying to become as accessible as possible.
And I think you're doing, and like on your Instagram page too, I was watching some of your videos, Lauren, just the education, just the simple education. And that's where people are getting their information. That's where like the average consumer or mom, or even like my daughter who's a teenager, she'll say things like, I've said them before. It doesn't matter, but she'll, oh, I saw this person talking, and I'm like, okay, great. Just to some degree, I'm like, this is when social media is a benefit, because more influencers and people that are getting on and talking about it, and that are genuine, and that your company is like created from your own challenges and struggles, and you just want what's best for everyone. And the planet, like your overall, like the transparency of your ingredients, and also just your overall mission and desire to support a healthy planet, and the farming and everything that you're doing is wonderful.
Yeah. I would recommend folks checking out the master class that you did.
Oh, yeah.
Around education. Lauren and Rob. Yeah. You want to speak to
that? What's Rob's film? It's really eye-opening.
Yeah. Rob Herring is the
director that I did a podcast and a masterclass with, and we really wanted to like give people something to take away and to print out, even to put on their fridge or go grocery shopping with, to teach them how to label read, what to look out for. It can be very overwhelming, especially if the reason that your now label rating is because you have been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition yourself or some kind of health challenge, or you all of a sudden have a child dealing with something health related, or they have eczema all over their body, or, they have severe allergies, whatever it is. And now you're standing in a grocery store with thousands of products. And I would say 98% of them are probably either trying to greenwash you or, putting ingredients in there that are unnecessary. And you really have to sift through all of these products to get to a few that may not trigger a reaction or, are actually benefiting your health in the package section, at least.
I think that's so important. And Stephanie and I have offered workshops in the past on specifically just sugar related and how to read a label and understand the sugar content in the product. But curious what you would say to our listeners if they're, if they have a health concern or they just want to, eat healthier in general and understand the food they're putting in their body. What is the number one or couple tips or suggestions you would offer to someone who's really new at all of the things you're talking about and kind of wants to dive in?
First of all, I want to say it shouldn't be this hard. And in the US, it's harder. And we're trying to make it less hard. And I think that the founders who are so intentional in creating companies where you don't have to turn any Kiki product around. Like, I want you to know that you can trust our brand. And same with Lefford. It shouldn't be this hard. So we're trying to take some of the work off of the individual in the store who's trying to, change their diet and become healthier. I think if you are consuming a packaged food, especially every single day, and it's consistently in your diet, it's like an overwhelming part of your diet, change that to a glyphosate residue-free version. And that is one of the most important things that I would do as a mom and for myself. So if you're buying a bread and you're making your kid's sandwich every single day and you're having a sandwich with that bread every single day and it's not organic, it probably has glyphosate. It has pesticide residue. And so if you swap to a glyphosate residue-free bread, or a cereal that you're giving your kids every single day that you're eating every single day. So that's where I would start, what are you constantly consuming? Because your body's not having a chance to try and do its own thing and try to detox from it. And if you are on the further end of the spectrum where you're you really want to make sure that your body's not holding on, I'm sure that you talk about detoxes and binders, and there are things that you can take to get the glyphosate out. And I think I just read something it really only takes a week of eating solely organic to have a lot of the glyphosate removed from your body. So we're not doomed. There's so much that we can do. And I want to validate especially the moms out there who are oh my gosh, how do I protect my child's, microbiome and immune system and the health? Because it can be overwhelming. And I think we're trending towards a happier, healthier place as a society.
That's such wonderful advice, Lauren. And just to try to take out some of the overwhelm and confusion and know that, if you've been feeding your child, a cereal and bread that's not great for the last how many years, it's okay. It's okay. They're fine. Marnie and I both have 3 kids that are older in their 20s, and trust us, we were not doing this. We were not this educated back 18, 20 years ago. We didn't know. This is our, becoming health coaches and in this space is our second calling. So, and it's okay. Our kids are still thriving, but we've made changes and they know, and you kind of slowly educate your kid along with yourself, which is helpful. And I know we touched on it, but we have a glyphosate test that you can run if you're curious, and reach out to us too, because sometimes that process, you just need a helping hand to get you through making those shifts and maybe cleaning up your pantry or swapping out products and helping you and your kids, because it can be really challenging, especially for older children who are kind of more set in their ways. So
we also run a quarterly liver detox too, which I think is a fantastic program to help kind of clear out some of this junk. And, the body needs to do that. And we do it quarterly because we believe that it's so important to do. And, we're getting so many chemicals thrown at us every day, no matter how clean we eat, right? Just in daily life. So there are things you can do. And it is, our detox is 7 days. And I know, Lauren, you mentioned like you can get this stuff out of your system in 7 days. You absolutely can.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of amazing professionals like you and Stephanie that are helping people get back to what the body is, the normal place, the harmony that we're meant to live in, that state. There's so much that we can do. Fear doesn't help it, being informed and being supported is what helps the most. So,
I couldn't agree with you more.
You got this.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation and introducing your product. We both tried it. We both love it. And we'll link up where people can find you and all the places that they can purchase Kiki Milk in the show notes. So that'll all be there.
Thank you.
And one final question we love to ask all of our guests is, what does the art of living well mean to you?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Because when I first came across your podcast, I did a double take because I've been in an organization for, I think, 16 years now called The Art of Living. And the art of living well and the art of living is something that we just aren't taught from either way. So the art of living is more about meditation and stress reduction and breath work. And then your podcast is more about health, body, but really holistic. Like you guys touch on everything too. But we're born into a world that doesn't prioritize that really, or teach you in school. There is an art to living. There's an art to, the seasons and living seasonally and the circadian rhythm and how to eat and how to move our emotions through our body. And I think, it's no longer considered woo-woo. It's considered an art, thankfully, where I think we're just getting back to our ancient roots, to be honest. And I'm so glad that you called your podcast that, because I've always loved, the art of living, and the art of living well really does mean something. And if you put it into practice, it will, change your life. So Alex, do you want to respond?
Yeah, well, I think that's a perfect answer. I guess I would add, I think art is an important word in the phrase here. And I think with art, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and art can mean different things to different people. And that it's not one size fits all, that you have to be prescriptive and perfect. You can be messy, and you can have paint on your fingers and do a finger painting, and that's art, and that there's beauty in that. And I think, don't let perfection be the enemy of great. And you're going to be messy if you're going to have ice cream, or, you're going to have a cheat meal. Like, it's okay. Right. Like, just keep on going. And, I love the word art. So kudos to you guys for building this podcast and this education. And it's so important. And, a rising tide lifts all ships. And I think we're all part of this rising tide.
Absolutely.
I love everything that you said, and the messiness. It's okay to get messy. Like, life is messy. That's part of your journey.
Yeah.
So,
and we don't want to be perfect, right?
No.
Perfectionism is not the goal here.
Right.
It's the art of living.
Yeah.
The art of living well.
Beautiful.
Well, congrats to your business and it doing so well, and to being true to your values, because that must be hard in this space, and we commend you for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. And we just wish you a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.